Fight over what's easy and who helps you protect what matters most when your own flesh and blood won't. Standing at the charity golf tournament registration table, my daughter Linda looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dad, you can't sit at the VIP table with us." It wouldn't look right with Rick's clients. I nodded, even though I'd just written a $4,200 check to sponsor the entire event for our family. My name is Chuck Peterson. I'm 58 years old, a retired Boeing engineer, and until that moment at Cherry Hills Country Club in Denver, I thought I was doing what any good father would do, helping my family succeed. Linda didn't know I'd been keeping track. She didn't know that over the past 18 months, I'd transferred exactly 100 and She definitely didn't know that I was about to make a phone call that would change everything. Let me back up. After my wife Mary died from cancer 3 years ago, I thought Linda would be my anchor. We'd always been close. She was my little girl, the one who used to sit on my lap while I explained how airplane engines worked. When she married Rick Coleman and moved to Denver's upscale Cherry Creek area, I was proud. Rick ran a successful real estate development company, and Linda had landed a marketing director position at a downtown firm making good money. The money requests started small. "Dad, we need help with the down payment on our new house." Rick's bonus got delayed. That was $25,000. Then it was private school tuition for my grandkids, Ashley and Timothy. "The public schools here just aren't good enough, Dad. You understand, another $18,000. Every time Linda promised they'd pay me back, just until Rick's next big deal closes or as soon as my promotion comes through. I kept saying yes because what grandfather doesn't want the best for his grandchildren? But the requests kept coming, each one more urgent than the last. Kitchen renovation, $35,000. We need new appliances and countertops, Dad. The old ones are falling apart. You'll love it when you visit. Emergency roof repair, $22,000. The inspector says it's urgent. If we don't fix it now, we could have water damage throughout the house. Rick's business expansion, $45,000. This investment will triple in 6 months, Chuck. It's a sure thing. I started keeping better records after the roof incident. Something felt off when I drove by their house 2 weeks later and saw workers installing what looked like a luxury outdoor kitchen complete with a wood-fired pizza oven, not fixing any roof. When I mentioned it to Linda, she laughed it off. "Oh, that's just a little extra project while the contractors were already here. Multitasking, you know?" That's when I really started paying attention. I began taking screenshots of their social media posts, saving every email and text message. My engineering background had taught me to document everything, and some instinct told me I might need this information someday. The golf tournament invitation came in March. Rick's company was hosting their annual charity event at Cherry Hills, one of Denver's most exclusive clubs. The kind of place where membership cost more than most people's annual salary. "Dad, you should come," Linda said over the phone, her voice bright with excitement. "Rick's really making a name for himself in the community. All the major players will be there. It'll be fun." I was excited. Finally, a chance to see my daughter and son-in-law in their element, to meet their friends, to feel included in their success. I imagined myself telling people about Linda's marketing achievements and Rick's growing business empire. I should have known something was wrong when Linda called back 2 days later. Her tone had shifted from excited to carefully neutral. "Dad, about the tournament. Rick needs to buy a sponsorship table to look good in front of his clients. Could you help out? It's $4,200, but it's for charity supporting local youth golf programs. You know how important that is." Of course I said yes. My daughter's happiness was worth more than money. Plus, supporting kids learning golf seemed like a worthy cause. I'd played a little in my younger days, nothing serious, but I understood the value of the sport for building character and business connections. The day of the tournament arrived with that crisp Colorado spring weather that makes you appreciate living near the mountains. I drove to Cherry Hills feeling proud, wearing my best polo shirt and khaki slacks, the ones Mary had picked out for me during one of our last shopping trips together before she got too sick. The clubhouse was impressive, even more so than I'd expected. All dark wood panels and crystal chandeliers, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering stunning views of the Rocky Mountains in the distance. The kind of place that whispered old money and established connections. I found Linda and Rick near the registration table, surrounded by other well-dressed couples. Linda looked stunning in a white sundress that probably cost more than I'd spent on clothes all year. Her blonde hair perfectly styled in one of those casual but expensive looks that takes hours to achieve. Rick wore a navy blazer with his company logo embroidered discreetly on the pocket, looking every inch the successful businessman he claimed to be. My grandkids, Ashley, 14, and Timothy, 12, were there too, dressed like they were heading to a country club fashion show. Ashley had inherited her mother's blonde hair and was already showing signs of becoming a beauty. Timothy looked uncomfortable in his button-down shirt and tie, probably wishing he was home playing video games. Grandpa Chuck. Ashley ran over and hugged me, nearly knocking me off balance. At least someone was genuinely happy to see me. Hey, sweetheart, you look beautiful. Very grown up. Timothy gave me a quick wave before going back to his phone, fingers flying over the screen. Teenagers and their devices, some things never change. That's when I noticed the tension. Linda kept glancing around, checking who was watching us, who might be listening. Rick's smile seemed forced, like he was performing for an audience. There was an undercurrent of nervousness that I couldn't quite place. Dad, Linda said, pulling me aside toward a quiet corner near the pro shop. We need to talk about seating. My stomach dropped. Here it comes, I thought, though I had no idea what was coming. Rick bought a table in the VIP section. It's where all the major investors and clients sit. Very exclusive, they limit it to just 12 tables. She paused, looking uncomfortable, her eyes not quite meeting mine. The thing is, the table only seats 8, and we already have Rick's biggest clients joining us. The Hendersons from the bank, the Washingtons who own half the shopping centers in Denver, and the Kramers who just invested in Rick's latest project. I waited for her to suggest getting me a seat at a nearby table, or maybe finding a way to squeeze in one more chair. That would be the normal thing to do, right? Your father sponsors the event. You find him a place to sit. Instead, she said, you'll be sitting over there, pointing to tables near the back of the dining area, past the buffet stations and close to the kitchen doors where servers were constantly walking back and forth. It's still a great view of the golf course. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. You don't want me sitting with you, Dad. It's not personal, it's just business. These are million-dollar clients. Image matters in Rick's industry. You understand, right? She touched my arm like she was explaining something to a child who didn't quite get it. I stared at my daughter, this woman I'd raised, supported through college, walked down the aisle, and financially backed for the past 18 months. The woman whose children called me grandpa, whose mortgage payments I'd helped cover, whose entire lifestyle I'd been funding without question. The woman who was now telling me I wasn't good enough to sit at a table I'd paid for. I understand, I said quietly. What else could I do? Make a scene at a charity event in front of Denver's business elite? Storm out and embarrass my grandchildren? Start an argument that would humiliate Linda in front of the people she was so desperate to impress? Linda patted my shoulder. Actually patted it like I was a well-behaved child who'd accepted his punishment gracefully. Thanks for understanding, Dad. You're the best. She turned and walked back to her family without a second glance. I watched her lean down to kiss Ashley's head, watched her laugh at something Rick said to one of his important clients, my family, the family I'd spent $118 supporting over the past year and a half. I walked to my assigned table feeling like I was in some kind of bizarre dream. The other people at the table were nice enough, a retired couple who'd bought a less expensive sponsorship, a young professional who worked for one of the vendors, a widow whose late husband had been a member of the club. They made polite conversation about the weather and the beautiful course, but I could barely focus on what they were saying. From across the room, I could see Linda in her element. She was animated, gesturing with her wine glass as she told some story that had the table laughing. Rick raised a champagne glass in a toast, probably to another successful business deal funded by money that wasn't his. Ashley and Timothy sat quietly, probably bored but well-behaved, picking at their salmon and asparagus. That's when I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never done before. I called my bank. First National, this is Larry speaking. How can I help you today? Yes, this is Chuck Peterson. I need to review all transfers from my checking and savings accounts over the past 18 months. Every transaction over $5,000. Certainly, Mr. Peterson, for security purposes, can you verify your date of birth and the last 4 digits of your social security number? I provided the information while watching my daughter charm people with money she hadn't earned, at an event she couldn't afford, maintaining a lifestyle that was built entirely on my generosity. I can email you a detailed statement right away. Mr. Peterson, is your email still chuckpedersen1965@gmail.com? Yes. Send it now, please. Done. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes. I'd like information about setting up a revocable trust. Can you transfer me to someone who handles estate planning? I'll connect you with our wealth management department, but they're closed until Monday. Would you like me to schedule a callback? Please do. 10 minutes later, I was staring at my phone screen, reading through the most depressing spreadsheet of my life. $187,000. In 18 months, I scrolled through the transfers systematically. March 15th, 2023. $205,000 house down payment. Rick's bonus delayed. May 2, 2023. $18,000 private school tuition, best education for the kids. July 10th, 2023. $35,000 kitchen renovation, appliances falling apart. September 3, 2023, $22,000 emergency roof repair. Inspector says urgent. November 18, 2023. $45,000 business expansion, will triple in 6 months. January 8, 2024, $15,000 car repair emergency. Transmission completely shot. March 2024, $23,000 Ashley's orthodontics meaning needs extensive work now. Today, $4,200 golf tournament sponsorship. The pattern was clear as daylight. Every transfer followed the same script. Urgent need, detailed explanation of why it couldn't wait. Promise to repay as soon as the next windfall arrived, followed by radio silence until the next emergency. I opened Facebook on my phone and searched for Linda's profile, something I rarely did. There was a photo from last week. Linda and Rick at some black-tie charity gala downtown, her wearing a dress I recognized from a Nordstrom catalog. I remembered seeing her try it on during a shopping trip we'd taken together. $2,800 for a single dress. It's an investment piece, Dad. Something I can wear to important events. Another photo showed the kitchen renovation I'd paid for. It looked like something from Architectural Digest, marble countertops that probably cost more than my first car, professional-grade appliances, custom cabinetry with soft-close drawers. The falling apart appliances had been replaced with $8,000 range and a $4,000 refrigerator that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. Most telling was a picture of Rick's real estate company. The photo showed their new office space, a gleaming suite in one of downtown Denver's premium buildings. New company vehicles lined up in the parking garage, all bearing the Coleman Development logo. A ribbon-cutting ceremony with the mayor, local business leaders, and what looked like a significant staff expansion. They weren't struggling, they were thriving. On my money, I looked up from my phone to see that the tournament had started. Rick was at the first tee with his foursome, including 2 men in expensive suits who I assumed were the important clients who couldn't be exposed to my working-class presence. Linda stood nearby on the perfectly manicured tee box, playing the role of the perfect corporate wife, cheering at appropriate moments and chatting effortlessly with the other wives. The whole scene suddenly felt surreal. Here I was, sitting alone at a table I'd paid to sponsor, watching my family enjoy an event funded by my retirement savings, while being treated like an embarrassing relative who couldn't be trusted around their important friends. I made another phone call, this one to someone who could actually help me do something about what I'd discovered. George Harper Law Office. George, it's Chuck Peterson. George Harper had been my colleague at Boeing for 15 years before he left engineering to become a lawyer. We'd stayed close friends through retirement, getting together for coffee every few weeks to complain about the Broncos and discuss our golf games. Chuck, how are you holding up? Haven't heard from you in a while. Not great, George. I need legal advice. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Of course. What's going on? You sound upset. I think I've been financially exploited by my own daughter. The silence on the other end told me George understood the gravity of what I was saying. After a moment, he said, "Come to my office first thing Monday morning. Bring everything you have." The next Monday, I sat in George's downtown office with a manila folder containing 18 months of bank statements, printed emails, text message, screenshots, and a timeline I'd constructed over the weekend. George, 61 years old with gray hair and the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent decades analyzing complex problems, read through the documents with growing concern. "Chuck, this is textbook elder financial abuse," he said finally, looking up from the papers. "But she's my daughter. I gave willingly every time, under false pretenses. Look at these emails." George pulled out printed copies of Linda's messages. "Dad, we'll pay you back next month, I promise. This is just temporary until Rick's deal closes. We're really struggling right now. These are clear representations that turned out to be false." I felt that cold rage building in my chest again. The same feeling I'd had at the golf tournament. What can I do? First, we protect your remaining assets immediately. Set up a revocable trust. Remove Linda from any accounts she might have access to. Second, we document everything systematically. Third, we prepare for the backlash. What kind of backlash? George's expression turned grim. When people like this lose their funding source, they get desperate. They might try to have you declared incompetent, claim you're not mentally fit to manage your own money. It's a common tactic. The thought made my blood run cold. Can they actually do that? They can try. That's why we're going to be proactive and get ahead of it. Over the next 2 weeks, George and I worked systematically, using the same methodical approach I'd learned in my engineering career. We established a revocable trust with my remaining $340,000, naming George as co-trustee. We scheduled a comprehensive psychological evaluation with Dr. Benjamin Miller, a neuropsychologist George recommended. We gathered every email, text message, and bank record that documented Linda and Rick's systematic exploitation. Most importantly, George suggested something that would have been unthinkable to me a month earlier. We hired a private investigator to document Linda and Rick's actual lifestyle versus their claims of financial struggle. I know it sounds extreme, George said, but if they challenge your competency, we'll need to prove they were lying about their financial situation. Pictures don't lie. The investigator's report arrived a week later and was more damning than I'd expected. Photos of Rick's new BMW M5, purchased just 2 weeks after my last major transfer. Restaurant receipts showing $300 dinners at Denver's most expensive establishments. Credit card statements revealing designer shopping sprees that totaled more than most people's monthly salaries. Country club memberships, spa treatments, vacation bookings to Aspen and Scottsdale. They weren't just getting by on my money, they were living like millionaires. The psychological evaluation with Dr. Miller took 4 hours and covered every aspect of my cognitive function. Memory tests, decision-making scenarios, emotional stability assessments. At the end, Dr. Miller smiled and shook my hand. Mr. Peterson, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds I evaluate. There's absolutely no indication of cognitive impairment or diminished capacity. Your daughter's petition, if she files one, will be frivolous. You think she'll actually try it? People who've been caught stealing often get desperate. Be prepared for anything. I was ready when the confrontation came. Linda called on a Tuesday evening, her voice carefully controlled, but with an undercurrent of tension I'd never heard before. Dad, we need to talk. Something's come up with your bank accounts. Can Rick and I come over tonight? What about the accounts? We'll discuss it when we get there. We're bringing the kids. They arrived 30 minutes later. Linda and Rick both looked stressed, though they were trying to hide it. Ashley and Timothy seemed confused about why they were there on a school night. Linda settled onto my living room couch like she owned it, while Rick remained standing, pacing slightly. Dad, Linda began, we've been thinking about your financial situation lately. My financial situation? I almost laughed at the irony. We're worried about you living alone, managing all this money by yourself. At your age, maybe it would be better if we helped you set up some kind of arrangement where we could assist with investment decisions and day-to-day money management. Rick leaned forward, his salesman persona in full effect. Chuck, I work in finance. I understand investments, asset protection, tax strategies. Why don't you transfer your accounts to a joint management setup? Linda and I can help protect your wealth and make sure you're not taken advantage of by strangers. The sheer audacity took my breath away. They wanted complete access to my remaining money while sitting in my living room, funded by money they'd already taken from me. That's very thoughtful, I said carefully, but I've actually already made some arrangements. Linda's smile faltered slightly. What kind of arrangements? I've moved everything into a revocable trust. George Harper is helping me manage it professionally. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Rick stopped pacing. Linda's face went pale. Dad, that's Linda struggled for words. That's not normal behavior. Moving money around without telling family, making major financial decisions alone. We're just trying to help you, like you helped yourselves to $187,000 over the past 18 months. The silence was deafening. Ashley looked confused. Timothy was still absorbed in his phone, oblivious to the tension. Rick's composure cracked first. That wasn't stealing, Chuck. That was family helping family. You gave freely every single time under false pretenses. Every transfer came with promises to repay. Let me ask you directly. How much have you actually repaid? More silence. Even Timothy looked up from his phone now, sensing something was wrong. Dad, Linda said, her voice taking on that concerned tone I'd heard her use with the kids when they were sick. I think you need to see a doctor. This paranoid thinking, these wild accusations against your own family. It's not healthy behavior for someone your age. There it was. The competency attack George had predicted with surgical precision. I've already seen a doctor, Dr. Benjamin Miller at Denver Neurological. Clean bill of health. He can provide the full evaluation if you'd like to review it. Rick stood abruptly, his salesman facade completely gone now. Chuck, let me be very clear about something. Either you reverse these account changes and restore our access to help manage your finances, or you'll never see Ashley and Timothy again, your choice. My grandchildren, the nuclear option, but I'd been preparing for this moment too. George Harper, my attorney, tells me that threatening to withhold grandchildren to control someone's finances is considered extortion under Colorado law. He suggests I record any future conversations where such threats are made. Linda started crying then, real tears, or performed ones. I honestly couldn't tell anymore. Dad, how can you do this to your own family? We love you. Everything we asked for was for legitimate reasons. We're not criminals. Then pay me back. We can't right now. But we will, when what? When Rick's next big deal closes, when your promotion comes through. I've heard those promises for 18 months, Linda. They're just words. Ashley spoke up for the first time. What's happening? Why is everyone fighting? Linda wiped her eyes and put on her mother voice. Grandpa is upset about some money things, sweetheart. He's confused about some financial arrangements. That was the last straw for me, using my granddaughter to perpetuate their lies. Ashley, your mom and dad borrowed $187,000 from me over the past year and a half. They promised to pay it back every single time, but they haven't repaid a single dollar. Now they want access to the rest of my money, and when I said no, they threatened to prevent me from seeing you and your brother. Dad, Linda snapped, don't involve the children in this. You involved them the moment you brought them here as leverage. Rick grabbed Linda's arm. We're leaving. Chuck, you have until Friday to come to your senses. After that, we're done with this family. They gathered up the kids and left, Rick slamming my front door hard enough to rattle the windows. Through the living room window, I watched him roughly buckle Ashley and Timothy into their car while Linda cried in the passenger seat. For the first time in 18 months, my house was completely quiet. 2 weeks later, George called with the news I'd been expecting. They filed the petition yesterday. Emergency psychiatric evaluation and conservatorship, just like we predicted. How strong is their case? Non-existent. We have Dr. Miller's evaluation, your complete medical records, and most importantly, we have documented evidence of their financial motivation. Plus, their attorney made a tactical error. What kind of error? They filed for emergency conservatorship, which requires them to prove you're in immediate danger of being exploited. But we can demonstrate that the only people who've actually exploited you are the ones filing the petition. The court hearing was set for 6 weeks later. I spent that time working with George to prepare our counteroffensive. We organized every piece of evidence into a presentation that told the complete story. The systematic exploitation, the false promises, the luxury lifestyle funded by my retirement savings, and the retaliatory legal action when I finally protected myself. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, but formal and intimidating. Judge Andrea Martinez was a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd heard every family sob story imaginable. Linda, Rick, and their attorney sat at the plaintiff's table. Linda had dressed conservatively and looked appropriately concerned. Rick wore his best suit and maintained a serious expression. Their lawyer was a slick man in his 50s who specialized in elder law. Their strategy was predictable but well executed. They painted a picture of a confused, paranoid elderly man making erratic financial decisions and turning against his loving family, who were only trying to help him. Linda's testimony was a masterpiece of manipulation. My father has always been so generous, she said, dabbing her eyes with tissue. After my mother died, I worried about him being alone. I tried to stay close to help him manage his finances and make sure he was okay. But lately, he's been different. Paranoid, accusatory. He claims we've stolen from him, but we never took anything. He gave freely because he loved us and wanted to help his family succeed. When their attorney asked for specific examples of my erratic behavior, Linda was ready. He disappeared for days without telling anyone where he was going. He's made wild allegations that we threatened him, which never happened. He's completely cut us off from any contact. It's like he's become a different person. Rick's testimony focused on my supposed financial incompetence and his qualifications to help manage my assets. He spoke smoothly about market volatility, investment strategies, and the dangers of elderly people being targeted by financial predators. When George stood up for cross-examination, I could see Linda and Rick tense up. They knew what was coming. Miss Peterson, George began, you testified that your father gave money freely. Let me read from an email you sent on March 15th. He held up a printed document. Dad, we really need help with the house down payment. Rick's bonus got delayed, but we'll pay you back as soon as it comes through. I promise. Linda's carefully composed expression started to crack. That sounds like a loan agreement to me, not a gift. Did you pay it back? We haven't had the opportunity yet, but I see. And this text message from July 10th, emergency roof repair needed. Inspector says it's urgent. $22,000. We'll pay you back next month. Did you pay that back? No, but we intended to. George was relentless. According to bank records, your father has transferred exactly $100,000 to your accounts over 18 months. How much of that have you repaid? The courtroom was completely silent. Linda's attorney looked like he wanted to object, but couldn't find legal grounds. None, Linda whispered. I'm sorry, could you speak up for the court reporter? None. George's voice remained ice cold. And at the golf tournament that your father sponsored for $4,200, you told him he couldn't sit with your family because, and I quote, it wouldn't look right with Rick's clients. Is that how loving families treat their generous patriarchs? Linda broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Rick's cross-examination was even more devastating. George presented the private investigator's evidence. Photos of luxury purchases made immediately after my transfers, restaurant receipts, vacation bookings, the BMW purchase 2 weeks after my final major contribution. Mr. Coleman, George said, you testified about the importance of protecting elderly people from financial predators. On your annual salary of $195,000, were you and your family struggling financially? Denver is an expensive city. Your mortgage is $3,222 monthly. Your car payments total $1,100 according to the evidence. You spend approximately $2,800 monthly on restaurants and entertainment alone. Does that sound like financial struggle? Our expenses. Yes or no, Mr. Coleman? Were you financially struggling when you took $7,000 from your elderly father-in-law? Rick's composure shattered. We were planning to pay it back. When, silence, Judge Martinez didn't even leave the bench to deliberate. I've heard enough, she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Mr. Peterson is clearly of sound mind and has every right to manage his own finances as he sees fit. She looked directly at Linda and Rick with obvious disgust. Furthermore, I'm deeply troubled by what appears to be systematic financial exploitation of an elderly family member. You should both be ashamed of yourselves. Outside the courthouse, Linda tried one last time to approach me. Dad, please, we can work this out. No, I said quietly. We can't. I'm still your daughter. You're a stranger who happens to share my DNA. My daughter died at that golf tournament. I walked away with George, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt completely free. The consequences for Linda and Rick were swift and comprehensive. The court transcript became public record within days. A reporter from the Denver Post picked up the story, and it ran with the headline. Local couple attempted conservatorship of father after exploiting him for $187,000. Rick's real estate firm fired him within a week. Linda's marketing company quietly let her go a month later. Their Cherry Creek house went on the market. The BMW was repossessed. They moved to a small rental in a working-class neighborhood I'd grown up in. I felt no joy in their downfall, but I felt no guilt either. They'd made their choices. 6 months later, I received a handwritten letter from Linda. She was working as a receptionist. Rick was driving for a package delivery service. She apologized genuinely and said that losing everything had forced them to confront what they'd become. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or money, just wanted me to know that they were finally learning to live within their means. I kept the letter but didn't respond. Maybe someday, but not yet. My life transformed completely. I joined a book club at the library, took up woodworking in my garage, and started traveling to places Mary and I had always planned to visit. Scotland, Ireland, the national parks we'd never had time for. I discovered that retirement could actually be enjoyable when you weren't constantly worried about the next financial emergency phone call. Most importantly, Ashley reached out directly when she turned 16. She'd read about the court case online and wanted to hear my side of the story. Grandpa Chuck, she said during our first coffee meeting in 2 years, I'm old enough now to understand what really happened. Mom and Dad were wrong. We rebuilt our relationship slowly and carefully. Ashley even convinced Timothy to come around eventually. We meet every few weeks at a diner near their school, always on neutral ground, away from the drama. The kids know I love them unconditionally, but they also understand that love doesn't mean unlimited financial support. Looking back, I learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling. And family members who treat you like a personal ATM aren't really family. They're financial predators who happen to share your last name. Was I harsh with Linda and Rick? Probably, but sometimes being harsh is the same thing as being honest. And after 58 years of trying to make everyone else happy at my own expense, I finally learned to put my own dignity first. If you're facing something similar, adult children who only call when they need money, relatives who mistake your kindness for weakness, family members who view your love as a business transaction, remember this: you taught them how to treat you by what you were willing to accept. The good news is that it's never too late to change the lesson. That golf tournament cost me $4,200 and saved me from losing everything else I'd worked for. Most expensive lesson I ever paid for, and also the most valuable, because it taught me that self-respect isn't selfish, it's essential, and that's worth more than any amount of money. Remember, you don't owe anyone unlimited access to your resources just because they share your DNA. Family relationships require mutual respect, not one-way ATM transactions. The most expensive gift you can give someone is teaching them that your love has no boundaries, because eventually they'll test every single one until there's nothing left of either of you.